So, when you've modified your bike, does it retain its value, or do you actually lose value in the bike? Catch you inside.
RevelatorAlf.
Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. I hope you enjoy the channel and the series of videos. Please like, share, subscribe, leave loads of comments below. Check out the website at RevelatorAlf.com. So, on this ride, I'm going to talk about doing performance upgrades or any kind of modification on your bike, and will you actually see a benefit in the value of that bike if you ever decide to sell it. Now, there are obviously two schools of thought here. First of all, is you actually modify a bike in your own image, as it were. That's what you're doing. You're not modifying the bike necessarily to sell it to increase the value. So unless you actually come to sell the bike, then it shouldn't really matter. You know, you're spending however many thousand to increase the aesthetics or increase the performance of that bike, but you know what the actual value of it in the end shouldn't make a difference. Now, what they'll say is that any modification that you do, as long as it's relatively tasteful, should not harm the value of your bike. In fact, you should help retain the value of your bike, perhaps even add a little bit as well. But is the reality the same as what they would let you lead to believe? Well, let's discuss this, shall we? I've had quite a few messages and quite a few direct requests to talk about this. Now, I can only go from my own past experiences and the experiences of those who I know. And this is not just relating to Harley Davidson. Of course, this is relating to all sorts of motorcycles. And indeed, you could extend this to cars or anything like that. Now, a vehicle in general is a depreciating asset. It's as simple as that. As soon as you ride it away from the dealership or away from the forecourt, or drive a car away from the forecourt, a brand new vehicle will lose value dramatically. That's what we're known as depreciation, right? Now, the way that you can help minimize the amount of depreciation is by obviously taking care of it. Now, the older a vehicle is, the more value it will retain in it being completely standard, completely stock. That's why you get so many people who are into their vintage cars and they're, you know, all they care about is returning that vehicle back to complete standard. They don't want modifications, they want it concourse, and they want it absolute standard, how it came out of the factory. And that's really important. And exactly the same for bikes, really. But most people aren't doing that, are they? Most people aren't keeping their bikes or their cars, well, cars maybe, certainly not bikes, keeping them completely standard. They're always making some kind of modification. And no more so is that relevant than in the Harley Davidson world, okay? In the American V12 world. It could be Indians as well, or Victories as they were, but especially in the Harley Davidson world. In fact, there's a whole industry, multiple industries that have grown up over the years just supplying custom parts. Okay, now the whole idea is that it gives you that added bit of flexibility to express your inner genius, as it were, your artistic flair, to make that bike your own. Harley Davidson give you a base bike, and then you just go and do whatever you want to it to improve it in whichever way you wish to, in whichever way you deem is appropriate, whether you think it's going to improve performance or improve its looks or its handling or whatever it is. But the question is, after you spent, let's say, £5,000 on a £15,000 bike or dollar bike or whatever it is that bike now worth £20,000 or $20,000 or whatever? And the reality is no, it isn't. Now, if, let's say, I'm in the market to buy a used bike, and I know I'm looking for a bike that I want to achieve a certain level of customization, I want different type of bars, I want a different I don't know, headlight, different seat, whatever. the first thing I'm going to do is try and look for a bike that's already got that on there, because the reality is then I don't have to spend that money on it. If it's something that I really want for my bike, my new bike, then I'll just go and buy a bike if I can find one that's already got it. I'll save myself loads of money. And the problem is that if you're trying to sell to a dealership, then they're going to try and hit you at the bottom line, and they're going to undervalue the bike so that they can increase their profit margin on the resale value. They know they're not going to get full market value or the same money as a brand new motorcycle, regardless of what equipment is on it, but they will be able to get a fair amount of money. Look, they're in business to make money, so you can't knock them for that. But so where does this leave you as somebody who's modified your bike, but let's say now you want to sell it. Let's say you want to trade it in for another type of Harley, another bike entirely. Where does this leave you? I think you've got to go in eyes wide open. I think you've got to say, right, okay, whatever modification I'm going to make, I'm making for the here and now. I'm making for my benefit. I don't think you should go in with any kind of illusion thinking that you're increasing the value of the bike. You may in special circumstances, but the reality is you're not increasing the value of your bike. You're only insisting against its devalue, and that's all you can do. When people actually pay for a stage 1, stage 2, extra seating, saddlebags and everything, usually that will all be sold with the bike. It's the same as when you do a performance upgrade, a stage upgrade, and let's say the dealership keeps your parts, your old parts, your stock parts. I would say never let that happen. Keep those, because that adds to the resaleability, let's say, of your bike, or you can actually try and cash in on some of those some of the value of those stock parts as well, you know, by private sales on eBay or something. Now, the problem is that, and most dealerships, you know, what they want to do, or anybody really, it's not just Harley dealerships, they want to sell you the bike, but they also want to make their money on the servicing and the maintenance, but also on the parts. I mean, that's where they're going to make the money, isn't it, on the parts that they can sell you. And they're going to try and sell you a dream. They try and sell you a dream, say, oh yes, well, you know, this is going to make this bike so much better and all this kind of stuff. And I suppose it really depends on what your viewpoint is. You know, are you going to fall for that spiel, that salesman patter? Or are you actually going to look at this logically and say, right, you have to differentiate between the two. There are almost two different discussions, two different conversations. One, you are just modifying your bike because you want to modify it. For whatever reason, it could be that this is for, you know, because you want to make it sound better, look better, or you might want to make it go better. You might want to make specific modifications that suit your style of riding. Okay, so you've got to separate that from anything on the value of the bike. Now, anybody in the motorcycle industry, motorcycle trade, will tell you that actually the margins on motorcycles aren't that great. They aren't that great. And so many people try and get into this buying and selling motorcycle game, and it doesn't usually work. You know, it's only the few that actually make it work. And what they'll tell you is this, and in fact any automotive trade, any business person will tell you, the least amount of money that you can spend on any vehicle, the better it will be. The better your profit margin will be on the resale. Obviously it depends what kind of modifications you're doing, if you're drastically improving the machine or whatever it is. But for the most part, you want minimal customization, minimal modification to increase the value of the bike, or let's say help retain its value. Now, I'm not talking about repairs here. I'm not talking about actually just making a bike function, spending the money to make it function properly. That's something completely different. I'm talking about just the modifications. So I think the lesson here is just be very careful what you spend your money on and how much you spend it, because most of us would say, well, I'm going to keep this bike and I'm not going to sell it. Well, with the best will in the world, none of us really know what's going to happen in the future. So you don't know whether you're going to sell it in the future or not. You don't know whether your opinion is going to change and you want to go for another bike. So that being said, you know, always be thinking about how much you're spending. Do I really need to spend this? And is it going to affect the value? Now, one thing I will say, and I've said this in previous videos as well, make the distinction between a performance modification and an aesthetic modification, because a performance modification will likely help to retain the value of any bike more than an aesthetic modification. And I'll tell you why. Because a performance modification, virtually anybody can agree with. Anybody can say, yes, that improves it, it makes it go faster, it makes it sound better, whatever. However, an aesthetic modification, you change the bars, you do a new paint job, you get that candy apple red, you know, with the flake, you get the stars and stripes all over your bike, you get the flames. So don't you love those flames, right? The problem is 9 out of 10 buyers, potential buyers, may absolutely detest flames. You don't know. So all of a sudden you just cut off 90%. And also what you got to consider is, no matter what you do, everything has a time and place. Everything is fashionable. Flames might be fashionable for a decade, then they go out of fashion. So timing is really important when you do the modification in terms of its looks, but also when you come to sell it as well. Now obviously there comes a point where the price of the vehicle, of the bike, bottoms out. And obviously the better condition it's in, the more likely you're going to be able to achieve the top layer of its value towards the top end rather than the bottom end. If you've got decent modifications, if it's in really good condition, if it's a low mileage, all that kind of stuff. So a dealership is always going to want to offer you low, and another dealership may offer you a little bit high. I would never go to the one dealership. I'll never go to get a one price. I'll get lots of different prices. But you've got to determine what kind of deal you're going to get on your new bike with a trade-in value, or should you just try and sell it privately? Sometimes it's better to trade in. Sometimes it's better to do a deal elsewhere with another dealership. Other times it's better just to go for a private sale. Now bear this in mind as well. One final thing: when you go to a dealership, you accept their price, then go to another dealership and ask them for a price and see what the difference is. You might find that another dealership has a customer who's looking for your type of bike, and they're willing to offer you a lot more just to keep that other customer happy. They might want to sacrifice some of their profit margins just to go on like that. Also, consider this: some dealerships will buy in bikes to sell to other dealerships as well. So they know that the profit margin between dealerships isn't going to be that great. So they're going to try and hit you rock bottom on those prices. So that's what you need to consider. Shop around for the best price, shop around for the best deal. Then once you've got your quotes for the value of your bike, then play dealerships off each other. See if they want to buy your bike and how much they're willing to offer. Just like servicing costs, if one is offering a better deal, then try and get the other one to price match it, or get them to throw in accessories, or trying to get you a better deal off your next purchase. There's lots to be done, but just bear in mind how much you're paying for extra modifications, and is it really worth it at the end of the day? Well, only you will know that. But I think the bottom answer here is most modifications will not increase the value of your bike. In fact, in many cases, the modifications that you make will not even increase the value above the value of a stock bike. I know, it's crazy, that's true. The fact of the matter is that sometimes stock bikes without modifications are just as valuable, if not more valuable, because you know what, another type of buyer will come on along and say, I want to buy a bike that's been completely unmolested, completely unmodified, completely untouched, and I want to make my mark on it. And you know what, I'm that kind of rider as well, that kind of buyer. If I'm kind of buying a bike, unless another bike specifically meets the modifications that I want to do it and I can save money, I'm going to be looking for a stock bike. That's what I want, a stock bike, and then I can change it as I wish. Anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about these modifications versus value and resale value. Yes, you do the modification for yourself, but will it impact resale value? Please like, share, subscribe, leave loads of comments below, check out the website at RevelatorAlf.com, and I'll catch you on the next video, well, coming very, very soon. Ta-da now.